Hey everybody, Riot Mort here with Static, and now that set 4.5 has been out for a while, we can resume our Patch Post Mortems. This is where we go over everything that has changed, how it landed, did we make the right change, did we make the wrong change, talk about the meta a bit, and hopefully learn from everything we've done so far to get us in a good spot. As a slight preview, 11.4 is a very big patch, and so a lot of the things we're going to be talking about are in that video tomorrow. But for now, let's focus on sort of how 11.3 landed and what went in there, and not so much about what we're doing to change everything that's coming up. So, Static, how you feeling about live right now?
I mean, I think the 11.3 ended up kind of, I don't say it's playing out as one of our worst nightmares, but it just didn't play out in an exciting way at the end of the day. The meta ended up being very heavy on the lower cost units, and strategies overall felt pretty stale by the end. And so, obviously, like I said, 11.4 is going to be a big patch that changes it all up, but we should talk about the things we did and did not do in 11.3. So.
Great. So with that, let's jump into it. Dragon Soul. So this is one I'm really impressed how it landed and how well you did with this. This was upon passing the Blessing after death, the ally's next basic attack will immediately trigger the Dragon Breath. And this was what looked like a very small change, but I think it made a big difference and made Dragon Soul a lot more fun to play.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where Giovanni gave us. I don't know if players know by the Chimerics or whatever. Giovanni just did such a good job with designing this new trait. It's just so cool. I remember seeing the Dragon Breath and was like, what? Sometimes you're playing and you just don't see it enough. And I think it's usually those fights where you're getting run over by the enemy. And so I thought maybe we could just help this kind of like be an anti-snowball mechanism for them to get off more consistent Dragon Breaths. So I'm really glad this played out in a fun and now it seems like a decently powerful way. So yeah, it's awesome when we're doing a change that's kind of just meant for more like gameplay flow or feeling or fun, and it actually has the right kind of power to it too. Is awesome when those two things can align together. So
nice.
Super happy.
All right, next up we have the annual Divine rework that we did. Where this time we took the duration to a flat 6 seconds, and the tooltip will be fixed next patch. And then we made the damage reduction and true damage scale 35, 45, 55, 65. How you feeling about that?
This is one of those changes that we set ourselves up to be in a good spot, but it's not exactly in the right spot yet, but it's certainly better than what it was. If you look at Divine in the patch before 11.3, it was kind of worth taking at 2, be solid at 4, and then just pretty much never go to 6 or 8. And I think now we have the levers we need by being able to modulate the damage reduction, the true damage based on the tier, to get those higher tiers and in the lower tiers at Divine 2 just in a better spot tuning wise. So I think we set ourselves up for success, but it's just not necessarily there yet.
Yeah, the positive is I think seeing 6 and 8 Divine be considered now is actually an interesting choice. Like I saw Kyun win with 8 Divine. I see people actually struggling with like, oh, should I go 6 Divine and 2 Adept, or should I go 8 Divine? Like that's a hard choice. So that part's positive. I think the negative though is, as you talked about, we didn't quite land the values perfectly. Divine 2 seems kind of insane for the value right now. So hopefully next patch we can get these values into a slightly better spot. But it also, like I said, it shows that we have the levers now that we can actually make these kind of adjustments, where before it was just duration, and it's really hard to tune a 3-second duration buff, So, cool. Spirit. We nerfed Spirit 4. I think this was a slam dunk. Spirit 4 was kind of dominating. It's still good now. People are still playing it, but it's not quite the OP early game comp that it was before. How you feeling?
I mean, I'm both happy and sad, if that makes any sense. Happy that it's in a good spot, but sad that I'm pretty sure this is what the PvE value was when we first had set 4 on PvE, and then we kind of just like circled back after going through, Zed's little fun times. So I think this is just a good lesson in not tweaking numbers that really aren't going to make a big difference either way. And I think this is one of those that I buffed it during PvE cycle, and I don't think ultimately it was only serving to buff Zeds, specifically like Spirit Zed compositions, and not really making it more diverse than as I was hoping. So
yeah,
it's just in the right spot now.
There's a longer talk someday about like these things like Zeke's, where it went from 30 to 40 to 35 to 30, and now it's good. It's like trying to figure out how to get items to be more understood and used without just buffing them, then nerfing them back to where they started. So, all right, Slayer. Slayer, we did a buff to 6 Slayer. And my honest opinion here is it didn't change a damn thing. Like, no one really plays 6 Slayer. I think 6 Slayer is just too many dead units you're carrying around. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I mean the nerf was. I mean the nerf lol. The buff wasn't that big, but in the end, I feel like Slayer's struggling with a lot of different things. Two main things. One, like I said, carrying some deadweight units. Characters like Darius just often not feeling as strong as they should be. Even Tryndamere to an extent. And then on top of that, Slayer is a very multiplicative trait. One of the most multiplicative traits we've ever printed or put in the game. It just scales so well with itemization, right? If you can get that Death Blade and other items onto your character, like they're going to benefit so much from lifesteal and the damage output. You're not going to be able to put items on all 6 of or 5 or 6 of your Slayers, you know. So that's just going to be unrealistic. So I don't know. I think Slayer is going to be an interesting thing to tune moving forward. Maybe if we can get all of the Slayers into a better spot individually, this will be less of an issue because I feel a little bit worried about buffing these numbers more than where we're putting them now. So.
I wonder if Slayer would have been better as like Hunter, where it would have been like 3, 4, 5, 6, or even just like 3, 5 or something like that. Might have helped Slayer be a little bit more flexible.
Yeah.
Okay, on to the champions. Brand attack range. This is one that surprised me because I didn't think this was going to be much of a buff. I was actually pretty concerned Brand was still going to be terrible. But after playing with it and trying some builds some Challenger players told me about, it actually seemed to do just the right job, where it's like now Brand can be nice tucked in the corner, nice and safe, cast a spell, get his Dragon Soul procs, and feels pretty good, actually. So I'm pretty happy with this one.
I mean, maybe we've gotten a little lucky here because I think the Dragon Soul change was a big question mark on how much that was going to be moving the bar. We knew Dragon Soul as a whole, as the composition, was underperforming, and so we're kind of cautious with Brand and Tristana buffs. And I think one of the bigger themes, and we'll talk about this in 11.4, is like it might just be actually that Brand and Trist aren't necessarily super weak. It's that most of the one costs are kind of too strong for their cost, and you know, we just need to basically pull up Brand and Trist, who are at the bottom, up a little bit, and then bring the others back down to get to a better spot. So,
yep, makes sense. Elise. So Elise to me is both a success and a failure. When I originally gave you the goals for Elise, I said, hey, we should make the champion more fun and more worth 3-starring, because right now there's like no world you should ever 3-star Elise. And it seems like we got it to where it was more fun. The Mana Reave effect is really cool, and I've seen people have this reaction where like, I won that fight because Elise Mana Reave Diana. It was an Elise difference. So that part's been cool. But I think Elise 3 is still like ultra low in the data and not something you should actually be 3-starring unless you like accidentally fall into it. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I think her spell and her traits just lean so heavily into the early and mid game, unfortunately, right now. And adding this hopefully was the idea was like, can we get her to have some value in the later game? And maybe we just didn't go far enough. Or there's other things we need to be looking at as well into making her more of a relevant 3-star and a character you might keep past like stage 4. Yeah, hopefully. I think there's been some funny stuff like around Hurricane and such stuff. They're like, hey, it's the Mana Reave spider. It's pretty funny.
Yep. All right, Tristana, you already talked about it a bit, but the Tristana buff didn't seem to move the needle much. But the reality is, like, Tristana and Brand might be where one costs are supposed to be, and so in that regard, it was probably a success.
Yeah, I think there's an argument that we could have gone a little bit farther here, and we'll have to see where Tristana lands, especially in 11.4, which we've kind of talked about. It's going to be a big patch. Be interesting to see that. And there's also those changes coming up to Shiv that I think may or may not affect her balance, so we'll have to look out.
Yep. All right, Diana got that bug fixed where her orbs don't break with Titan's Resolve. We should have done it. Good. Hooray. Not much to say about that one, right?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't that hard to fix, but I remember it was, at first I thought, man, this is going to be like too impossible to do, but it wasn't too bad. I'm glad because I get messages about this at least like twice every week.
Yep. Okay, then we have Darius. Darius got a slight buff at 2 and a bigger buff at 3. This to me was a bit of a miss. I felt direction-wise that Darius 3 was already doing just fine, it was Darius 2 and Darius 1 that were struggling. So I personally would have liked to see more like a 600, 900, 1300 kind of thing. But how you feeling about this one?
I mean, I still think it's an improvement. He was underperforming at all star levels. I think we could have safely even buffed him at 1 star here and been fine. But I think he's struggling with a lot of different things around just being a melee carry and in general being a threshold type character. Where if we overstep our bounds on the numbers, it's just gonna make a patch a nightmare for us.
Yep.
So I think he's just one where we have to tiptoe, and I think that just unfortunately feels a little bit bad that he just kind of feels like a dead character in a lot of situations when you're shop.
Yeah, because the thing you don't want is, oh, I got a Darius from a capsule on 1-1. So now I instantly win 2-1 through 2-4 because I have good items for that Darius and he just kills the entire enemy team. So definitely don't want that. And like you said, those threshold champions can be pretty difficult to balance. So, and then the last change that was in there was just Shroud of Stillness being adjusted to match our Mana Reeve debuff. This is didn't change a damn thing. Happy it's there for the future. So not much to talk about there. So overall, 11.3 was a small patch, which, is good so that we can let things resolve. But it sounds like we both agree that it didn't resolve in a great place. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't want to beat ourselves up too much because I do think this strategy of having a smaller patch following kind of like a bunch of ambiguity in the system. So whether that's releasing new set 4.5 or just doing a big patch and changing some other fundamental systems, having that patch to kind of survey the land and see where we're actually at. Because I think going into 11.3, you have to realize we work on these patches weeks in advance before they get out to everyone. It wasn't clear what the issues of the game really were. There was, some people were complaining about this or that. And I think during the play session of 11.3, we kind of saw how the game really played out and the meta played out. And so, I think you do the 2020 vision, or what's it called?
Yeah, hindsight 2020.
It's yeah, I mean, I would have loved for us to hit some of these one costs that were pretty out of line, like Nidalee, maybe Yasuo and stuff like that. But
yeah,
it's just hard if I literally teleport myself back in time to when we were making this patch. It's just hard for me to say that we should have done that, knowing what we did at the time.
I mean, for time frame wise, we released the B patch Tuesday afternoon. They got rid of the Elderwood Rakan meta, and our patch lock was the next day. So we had 1 day to patch lock. And I think it took till the end of the next week before the 11.3 where all the one costs and Kales were really thriving. And so it felt like for players, almost 3 weeks of it by the end of it. But yeah, kind of unfortunate, but very hard to look at and go, oh yeah, I knew that was going to happen, because I don't think anyone did. So, all right, well, that's it for this patch post mortem. It is a bit of a short one because it was a small patch, but expect that was a lot of what we did wrong. So now on the 11.4 rundown, you can look at, well, what are we doing about it? And that's a much longer video. So make sure you check that out tomorrow. All right. Anything else, Static?
No, I mean, I'm hoping 11.4, it's for me, it's like a new haircut and it's like a new year. So hopefully 11.4 will bring some good change to the game that everyone can be excited about. So
sweet. All right. That's going to do it for us. Until next time, take it easy.